There was a tremor in the boy's voice, small and brittle as an old bell. "They took my mother," he told the cowboy, not knowing he stood before a living legend. In the wide, sun-bleached silence of a roadside diner, that confession landed with the weight of a confession twice its size. The cowboy straightened his hat, the lines around his eyes deepening like rivers carved into stone, and listened. This is not a story of showdowns or gunsmoke. It is a portrait of legend meeting ordinary grief, and the strange grace that can arise when the two collide. The cowboy had been a myth for longer than the boy had been alive. Fewer townsfolk spoke of him now, and when they did, it was in the hush reserved for saints and sinners. He had a way of appearing at the edges of calamity, a flicker of silhouette against a barn fire, a steady hand at the back of a hospital room, a presence you felt before you saw. People called him by a dozen names, none of them his own. He rode a horse that seemed as old as the horizon, carried a rifle that was as much a story as a tool, and kept his past locked behind a gaze that betrayed nothing but a profound weariness. When the boy stumbled into the diner, all scuffed knees and earnest eyes, the room rearranged itself to make space for his smallness. He clutched a photograph, edges smudged, of a woman whose smile held sunlight. "They took my mother," he repeated, with the kind of certainty children have about the turning of seasons. The cowboy looked at the picture, at the woman who must have been his world, and something like recognition flickered in him. Maybe he remembered a laugh, a face at a crossroads. Maybe he merely remembered what it was to be young and raw with loss. People expect legends to be distant, to save villages and then ride off into sunsets. But the cowboy knew salvation was never so clean. He had been saved and had saved, often in ways that left scars deeper than any badge could hide. He had learned to listen where most people spoke, to move when most stood frozen, and to heal with small, stubborn gestures. So he fed the boy coffee and spoke quietly, not with platitudes but with the careful, precise language of someone who has navigated the dark before. "They took my mother," the boy said again, and for a moment it was not a plea but a map. He could describe the truck, the scent of diesel, the village where shadows lengthened at noon. The cowboy's mouth formed syllables he had not planned to share. Names, routes, a pattern he had seen 100 times in his work as a tracker of misfortune. He offered the boy something rarer than bravado, a steady plan. They would move at dawn. They would follow the tracks fresh as a prayer. They would not promise miracles, only effort, which in the end is often the more honest kind of courage. What followed was neither spectacle nor cinematic triumph. They did not burst through doors with brass band pomp. They walked the thin line between hope and reality, knocking on doors, trading stories for information, setting traps of kindness where suspicion might linger. The cowboy taught the boy the odd math of searching. Patience multiplied by persistence equals progress. He taught him to look for the small things, a thread snagged on a fence post, a child's toy left behind, clues that speak when words will not. In the hours and days that followed, the boy watched the cowboy not as myth, but as a man. He saw the careful way he listened, the way he made room for fear and fed it with plans. He saw him apologize when needed and admit when he did not know. That mixture of humility and competence is what made the cowboy legendary. Not the rifle or the stories, but the willingness to stand in the messy middle of human trouble. When at last they found the woman, the reunion was not a cinematic crescendo, but a quiet unspooling of relief and grief braided together. The cowboy bowed his head, not in triumph, but in respect for the fragile miracle of survival and return. The boy, who had called him a savior, now called him by a name the cowboy had not been given in years: friend. Legends often begin as feats and end as fables, but in the space between, they are made of small acts. The cowboy's legend was not an absence of pain, but the steady refusal to let it have the final word. In that diner, over a chipped cup of coffee, a living legend answered a child's simplest, most urgent plea. He did not wear his fame like armor, he wore it like a tool, and used it to bring a mother home.